Good morning to all of you. Dr. R. Jagannathan, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of this esteemed university, Dr. Jayaraman, the Dean of the Department of Economics, Dr. K. Krishna Kumar, Head of the Department of Commerce, the distinguished members of the faculty, esteemed guests who are present here, beloved students, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations to all of you on this 75th Constitution Day. I rather would say that we are to congratulate ourselves at the eve of this 75th anniversary of the Indian Constitution. I am so much enthralled and delighted to be amidst you. And particularly, I am so much overwhelmed to see the large number of women students here occupying the chairs in this hall as students of this university. And I'm just recollecting the position of higher education in India at the time when we got independence. In 1947, it is recorded that the higher education level was so minimal and at the lowest rate of only 8% of the students who were passing out of the schools had the opportunity to pursue higher education. And of that 8%, only 1% was fortunate to enter into institution of good quality. Today, over the passage of almost 75 and odd years, what we witness here is about more than 1,000 universities in this country and 150 and more institutions of national eminence and thousands of colleges. And it is very good to see that large number of girl students are present here. And your Vice Chancellor was happy to inform me in the morning that 80% of our students are women here. It is a moment of great pride to see that. It is good that we as students of these educational institutions remember and commemorate and seek to celebrate this Constitution Day. Why this Constitution Day? Why this 26th of November is commemorated as the Constitution Day? All of you know that. It was that day on which the Indian Constitution was adopted by the Constituent Assembly, which framed the Constitution of India. It is a moment of great pride for the entire country that we gave to ourselves the Constitution. All of you know that India was not born as a country perfect. It had its congenital crisis before India was born. It was a great amazement, and to some it was an amusement that India was being born as a country. Historians go on record saying that India did not fit into any type of the definition of a country or a nation. You all know, especially students of the history department would be aware, Aristotelian description of a nation or a country, the three essential ingredients are: one is the definite territory, the other is a defined set of people, third, a common government. India did not have any one of the three at the time when we got independence. It was a fragmented nation. Apart from the regions under the control of the British regime, there were almost 600 to 700 princely states, nations under the kingdoms, and more than 1,000 zamindaris, hundreds and hundreds of the samasthanams like Travancore, Hyderabad, Mysore. All these almost 1,000 and odd fragmented parts wanted to join together as a single nation, what we call India. It was a great surprise for everyone in the world that such a hugely variegated population, how it was going to live as a single nation, as a single country. That too with the democracy as the rule of governance. It was a matter of great surprise, utter surprise. And you know that the population was roughly around 60 to 70 crores of people at the time when we got independence. And this 60 or 70 crore was never a homogeneous community. On the other hand, it was so widely variegated, hugely heterogeneous. Historians have gone on record saying that this 60, 70 crores of people were composed of 6 major ethnic groups, 52 major tribes, 6 major religions, 18 major languages, 1,600 minor languages and dialects, 6,400 castes and subcastes. It was a historic wonder how these people took a very bold decision of being together as a single nation, that too surprisingly under a single constitution. People all felt this nation would never survive even for one single year. John Strachey, you might have heard about, the person who did a lot of research in India and the past history of India. He kept on delivering series of lectures in the University of Cambridge, where he revealed that this is absolutely impossible for India to live as a single nation for even 1 year. That was the situation. But our leaders were strong enough to take a bold decision to keep the country together. And that is how India was tried to become a nation, and it became a nation. Not only at the formation, at the genetic level, but even after that, there was a lot of crisis. Even it had the birthday crisis. You might have read. 15th of August 1947 is our Independence Day, the day when we were born as an independent nation. Even for fixing that date, we had our own trouble. Though India got independence, India got freedom, it did not have the freedom to choose its own date of freedom. The Britishers had to dictate on us. It is an irony of history that India got independence not by our own deed. After a long battle of freedom, a non-violent battle, we got freedom at the end. But again, freedom was conferred by a British Parliament's enactment, the Indian Independence Act 1947. Did we have at least the freedom to choose our own date of freedom? 15th August 1947 was never the date chosen by us. On the other hand, it was a date thrust by the Britishers on us. 17 years prior to the date of independence, that was sometime in the year 1930, January 26th, the Indian National Congress, in its national conference at Lahore, proclaimed Purna Swaraj, absolute freedom. And since that date onwards, every year, 26th of January, the Indian National Congress and all the votaries for Congress went on celebrating 26th of January as the date of independence, the date of Purna Swaraj. 17 long years. Then at the end, Britishers somehow agreed for giving us independence in 1947. And our people, leaders, wanted the same date of Purna Swaraj as the date for our independence, obviously the 26th of January 1948. But we did not have the freedom to choose our own date. Lord Mountbatten, who was the last viceroy of the British Empire and the first Indian Governor General, he persisted that the date should be 15th of August 1947. Why he was so particular about the date was because he wanted to make this day as the date of commemoration of the second anniversary of the surrender of the Japanese forces before the British Allied forces. It happened 2 years ago on the 15th of August 1945. You might all know that in August, after the explosion of the atomic bomb in Japan, Japanese forces surrendered before the British Allied forces. Lord Mountbatten was the commander-in-chief of the British Allied forces in the region Southeast Asia. So he wanted to commemorate the second anniversary by fixing that date as the date of independence for India. But what happened is not only our leaders disagreed with that, our astrologers, our soothsayers all said 15th of August 1947 is a very inauspicious day. It is an ill-ominous day. We can't take independence on that day. But Mountbatten was very much unyielding. He was very much persistent. And there was a big dialogue between the two parties, and at last a compromise was struck. It shall be neither 14th of August nor 15th of August, but at the 0 hour in the middle of these 2 days. That is how India was born as a midnight baby at the 00 hour in the dead of darkness. You might all remember Winston Churchill's famous proclamation that the sun will never set in the British Empire. But it happened so unfortunately for them. Part of the British Empire, that was India, was freed when there was no sun at all on the sky. It all happened in the mid of night. The Constituent Assembly assembled at the Central Hall of the Parliament. In those days, it was known as the Central Hall of the Indian Legislative Council. The meeting started sometime after 11 p.m. at night. After two speakers, including Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, all the eyes of the people were set on the clock. When clock would strike 12 at night. When the clock struck 12, Lord Mountbatten rose from his chair, handed over the documents of freedom to the hands of our first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru. After receiving that papers, he delivered the historic address, Tryst with Destiny, and he said, at the stroke of this midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India is awakening to life and freedom. This moment, which comes but rarely in history, we have to step out from the old to the new. An age ends when the soul of a nation long suppressed finds utterance. That is how we were born. That is how India was born. That is how the soul of India got utterance after almost 200 and odd years of British colonial rule. Did the problem end at the time when India was born? No. Then the question is that India should be governed by which rule? What kind of governance? Whether it is a presidential form or republican form or parliamentary system of government like the Westminster system. For all those, we had to draft our own constitution. Our constitution was to be drafted by a big assembly of people called the Constituent Assembly, composed of more than 270 people. Again, it had its origin sometime in 1946 at the aftermath of the Cabinet Mission Plan. It was set in motion sometime in 1946. But please remember, this Constituent Assembly which framed our constitution is again not our own making. On the other hand, it got statutory recognition or legal acceptance only again by a British Act of Parliament, that is the Indian Independence Act 1947. Somehow, we people wanted to proclaim that this constitution is not the charity of the British, it is our own. That is how, after a prolonged discussion for almost 3 long years, exactly 2 years, 11 months and 18 days, the Constituent Assembly members, numbering more than 270 eminent people, after a great deal of deliberation, brought forth to us the Indian Constitution, the lengthiest in the world, with 395 articles and 8 schedules at that point of time. In order to eliminate the impression that we are no longer subordinate to the British, and this constitution is never the byproduct of the British rule, but it is our own. That is how the Constituent Assembly wanted to proclaim that this is our document which we made and which we gave to ourselves. You might remember the beautiful preface, the preamble to the Constitution, how it starts. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of this nation. We in this Constituent Assembly, on this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution. That is how the preamble reads. Therefore, Indians as a nation proclaimed to the world, hereafter we are an independent sovereign nation, having a constitution made by us for ourselves, and we are going to live under this constitution. Please remember, this constitution was put into operation not immediately after its adoption, because the leaders of Congress, the people of India, did not want to forget that glorious day, 26th of January, where they announced Purna Swaraj some 17 years ago in 1930. Therefore, they wanted to celebrate that day as well. Though Constitution was adopted in November 1949, 26th, they made the full Constitution become functional and operational on the 26th of January 1950. That is how we have 2 days for celebration. One, Independence Day on the 15th of August 1947, and the other as the 26th of January 1950 as the Republican Day. No other nation has this privilege of celebrating 2 days every year in any of the countries. But we have that unique fortune. Then what happened after the advent of the Indian Constitution? Was everything perfectly in order? No. It was again a matter of great surprise and amazement for the whole world. The political philosophers, the political analysts, the national leaders, and everywhere, politicians, everybody started suspecting, would that India, under this constitution, especially with the socialism, democracy, and the popular franchise, voting for everyone, men, women, rich, poor, elite, downtrodden, everybody will have the equal franchise power. With this, will this nation survive even for 1 year? With all these diversities in race, creed, caste, everybody, everything. Some of the political analysts believed that India will not survive for 1 year full. But we are here living successfully for 75 long years, and we are today still living together as a single nation under the single constitution and setting out to the whole world how democracy should function. This is a matter of great pride and honor for us. Even our own great historian, contemporary historian, Ramachandra Guha, you might have read, he himself foretold, my heart wishes it should live for long, but my head doesn't agree. India would not live beyond 1 year because the nation is too big, too complicated, too confusing. A nation, one might see, a nation unnatural. What was prophesied as a nation unnatural became a perfectly natural country, natural nation, setting out itself as a role model for the whole of the world today. The credit invariably and undoubtedly goes to only one thing, namely one single document. That document is the Constitution of India. We are all proud of that document. This document is full of compromises, full of understanding between the state and the citizen, among the citizens, among the groups, minorities, non-minorities, oppressed class, elite class, reservation, Anglo-Indian communities, so on and so forth. Multiple compromises are set down in one single document, the Indian Constitution. We must be grateful to the forefathers who made this Constitution. The three chapters which are very much pivotal are Chapter 3, the fundamental rights, Chapter 4, the directive principles of state policy, and Chapter 4, capital A, that is the fundamental duties for the citizens. How beautiful it is to see one set of rights which are preserved for the citizens, where the state cannot trample upon. State can never destroy or try to infringe even one of these fundamental rights which are very dear to our heart, which we hold as a sacred part of the Constitution, the fundamental rights chapter 3. This is an injunction, a protection against the mighty state, the majoritarian government. It is for the rights of the citizens. Even one single citizen can agitate against the whole mighty parliament or the whole mighty executive government for the enforcement of his fundamental right. One single citizen of this country. Even though the parliament, by a decision of majority or unanimity maybe, representing 140 crores of people, try to pass a law against the fundamental right of one single person on the street, he can move the court saying that I am right in my claim for the rights. The whole lot of the people, 140 crore people minus me, are wrong. The courts are there to strike down the law in order to protect the right of one single individual against the whole of the rest of the nation. That is the church right that is given to us under Part 3. Numerous rights are there: right to life, right to personal liberty, right to free movement, right to farm associations, right to have occupation, profession, trade, businesses, so on and so forth. Even now, right to education as well. We can certainly enforce all these rights against the state, which is mighty and majority. Second part, that is part number 4, is the commandments for the state to follow. What shall be the directive principles which the state, as the democratic state, should do while exercising the lawmaking power? There is a set of guidelines, what we call the directive principles of state policy. Of course, these directive principles are not enforceable straight away in the courts of law, but certain rights have now fruitioned into fundamental rights because of the interpretation of those rights or those directive principles by courts. The best illustration would be right to education. Right to education was never a fundamental right until 2002. It was in Part 4, Directive Principles of State Policy. Nobody can enforce it. But because of the passage of several years, several decades, Supreme Court in the year 1993 felt it is too long and too late to keep the right to education still as a directive principles of state policy. Therefore, we now declare that this right has now fruitioned into a fundamental right. And as an aftermath of the judgment in the famous Mohini Jain's case, Parliament itself rose to the occasion and brought out a new amendment by introducing Article 21, capital A in the Constitution into Part 3, making it as a fundamental right. Education has become a fundamental right now. Then coming to today's topic, namely the fundamental duties of the citizen. First is fundamental rights. Second is the duty of the state. Third is the duty of the citizen to the country. We all remember the famous statement of Kennedy at the time when he took office as the President of the United States, sometime in 1960s. He said, don't ask what the nation will do for you. You please try to ask yourself what you are going to do for the nation. That is the principle which is enunciated now in this new article, Article 51, capital A, which sets out 11 items of fundamental duties that ought to be discharged by the citizen to the state. 11 items. Originally at the time, the original constitution did not give this chapter at all. There was no Article 51, capital A, in its original form. It was almost 26 years later, in the year 1976, by the 42nd Amendment to the Constitution, this chapter 4 capital A, with the Article 51 capital A was introduced with the 10 items of duties. Of course, in the 86th Amendment, which happened in 2002, the 11th item was added, namely the educational obligation. The parents and the guardians' obligation to give education to the children through the state machineries. That is the last of all items. And I would just conclude by, I don't wish to take you all to all these 11 items except reading them. This is a very small article, just I would read out for your remembrance. Fundamental duties, Article 51, capital A. It shall be the duty of every citizen of India to abide by the Constitution and to respect its ideals and institutions, the national flag and the national anthem. To cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle for freedom. To uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of India. To defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so. To promote harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood amongst all the people of India, transcending religious, linguistic, and regional or sectional diversities. To renounce practices derogatory to the dignity of women. To value and to preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture. To protect and improve the national environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. To develop the scientific temper, humanism, and the spirit of inquiry and reform. To safeguard public property and to abjure violence. To strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity, so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor and achievement. Last of all, who is a parent or guardian, to provide opportunities of education to his child, or as the case may be, ward, between the age of 6 and 14 years. These are the 11 catalogued items of fundamental duties that are expected to be discharged by every citizen, more so by the students of these higher educational institutions. I don't wish to explain or describe the content and the import of all these, each one of these duties, because these are all quite understandable to all the people who are in higher education, except highlighting 1 minute on the significance of 2 items of these fundamental duties, which actually I hold as very much dear and cherished. That is number 5 and 6, E and F. To promote harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood amongst all the people, transcending religious, linguistic, and regional or sectional diversities. Then F, to value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture. As I began saying to you, India was a conglomeration of people of diverse cultures, diverse creeds, and varieties of languages and varieties of religion. But so far, so good. We have been living together for 75 long years and after, beyond that, because of the leaders what we had, and because of the constitution what we framed for ourselves, and because of the character and conduct of the people of India. We are very hospitable. History records that we never conquered any other nation. On the other hand, we were receiving all the people. In 1958, one of the famous statements made by Judge of the Supreme Court, Dr. S.R. Das, in 1958, he said, India's composite culture, India was a welcoming country. He says in the beautiful words, throughout the ages of endless inundations, people from distant regions and distant climes came to this land. The diverse creeds, the diverse races, and the diverse cultures all met here. Aryans and the non-Aryans, Dravidians, Chinese, Scythians, Huns, Pathans, Muslims, Zoroastrians, and Christians, all of them reached this land. All met and gathered, and they all got mingled, merged, and dissolved and lost into one single entity, that was India. It's beautifully echoed by none other than our famous poet, philosopher, Dr. Rabindranath Tagore, when he said, "None shall be turned away from the shore of this vast sea of humanity, that is India." I am sure, friends, before you, that we will live long, we will live forever as a true democracy with a republican form of government, as long as we cherish all the diverse cultures, we accept everybody as our own, and we shall never try to chase anyone from the shore of this vast sea of humanity, that is India. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity.